Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder of Publish Your Purpose, and I am here with Gavin Watson, who is the newest author of the PYP family with his book, Altruistic Business. Gavin, welcome. I'm so excited to be having this conversation today.
Yeah, no, me too. This is really good.
Very excited. So I feel before we even hit live to have this conversation, I feel like there's so much overlap and similarity in just how you and I both kind of show up in the world. So I feel like we can go in a lot of directions for this conversation, but I would love to start by just kind of painting the broad strokes of who you are and kind of like what you're doing in the world.
Sure. So I was part of the third generation of a family business. It was called Watson Incorporated. It was in West Haven, Connecticut. And we had about 330 employees, and we sold the business in 2019 to one of our very large competitors. And when I was, in the business, in the family business, I was very conscious about the way we were running the business for the sake of the employees and the customers and our relationships with the outside world. We were very much involved in community things. Not just myself, but the rest of the family members. And towards probably in 2017, 2018 or so, I read the book, Conscious Capitalism, and it sort of lit me up because it was the sort of thing that I'd been trying to do, but I didn't have a name for it. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, it's like as my son says, it's a thing now. It's got a name. So I found that there was a chapter already in Connecticut. It had started in 2016. And so I joined up, and I'm currently the board chair of the Connecticut chapter of Conscious Capitalism.
I love it. I definitely want to talk about your book more, but do you want to just kind of say briefly, like the high level elevator pitch of what conscious capitalism is?
Sure. So conscious capitalism is basically a much better way to run a business. So maybe I should also say, so my approach, where I'm coming from, is I'm very focused on future generations of people. So there's about 8 billion of us or so on the planet right now. And the things that we do now in our generation will affect billions and billions of people going forward. So, if we keep the population the same as it is now, 10 generations, that's 80 billion people, 20 generations, that's 160 billion people that will be to some extent affected by what we're doing now. The things that happen early on in the system have a bigger impact on things later. And clearly climate change is a big factor. It's up to the people who are alive right now to determine to a large extent what, all those future generations will be dealing with. But also other social systems there, education, medicine, equity, inclusion, all of those things. And one of the really big factors in all that is our perception about business and how businesses should be run and what they're all about. So and the common, perception or expectation is that, businesses are all about raising, creating value for the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And that's a really broken model. And it also doesn't work anywhere near as well as conscious capitalism does. So it's, some people think that, so you start talking about conscious capitalism, people think, oh, this sounds all warm, fuzzy, peaceful, love and granola kind of thing. And it's not going to be good for my business. It's not, maybe I want to do it. Maybe I feel like I should be doing it, but it's, it's just going to subtract from the way the business is going to perform. And that's really not true. So the reason why I wrote the book was to explain that actually by doing these things and doing them, well, the business will actually outperform the rest of the competition. And at the same time, employees are going to, be much more fulfilled at work, better relationships with all of your suppliers and your customers. The world is going to benefit. And if we're really going to get anywhere for improving the world for all of those people in the future, this is a key piece that really has to get sorted out. So,
yeah. There's so many things that are popping up in my mind right now, but thinking about even just kind of the title of your book, right? So we're talking about kind of conscious capitalism, which I think if we just kind of break those two words apart, like look at them separately. It's a conscious approach to capitalism, right? Like and what you're saying is that there's an outperformance that occurs when
Yes.
someone has this baked into their business model.
Yeah.
What was your framing for your book to be titled Altruistic Business?
Yeah. So the basic framing is that altruistic businesses will outperform businesses that are about self-interest. So, and the reason that I say that is it's based on evolutionary biology. So there's a evolutionary biologist, his name is David Sloan Wilson, and about a decade or so ago, he came out with a different view of evolution than the one that we're all used to. So, the typical view is it's all survival of the fittest. The smartest, fastest, strongest, whatever is going to outcompete the competition. And the economists basically just applied that same model to the world of business and said, well, the most rational, value calculating, purely self-interested, business people or business or whatever is going to outcompete the competition. And what David Sloan Wilson did in the field of evolutionary biology is he basically said, hold on, there's more to it than that. And evolution can actually also happen at the level of the group. And that's what we human beings do really, really well, much better than any other species. If you look around at us human beings, we're not all the same. We're very different. We have different skill sets, different abilities, different ways of looking at the world. Some of us are more optimistic, some more pessimistic, all these different things. And the reason for that, the reason why that's true is because we're meant to function in a group. So if you were evolution and you were designing a system that was going to outperform self-interested individuals, the only system that can actually do that is a system based on altruism and groups working and collaborating together. And that the creatures that you would need in a system like that are the ones who are very diverse, different personalities, different abilities, different skills, because you don't need a group that's all the same. You need a group with, maximum different skills and abilities. So, there was a guy, Marcus Buckingham, who wrote a book a few years ago, and he sort of, he said, if I work really, really hard on something that I'm really bad at, I might go from being completely pathetic to just miserable at it. But if I take the same amount of effort and I put it into something that I'm already really good at, I might be able to get to be world class. And what do we really need in organizations with a whole bunch of different people? What's optimal is to have a bunch of people who are performing extremely well on the particular things that they do really, really well. And then David Sloan Wilson really sums it up by saying, selfishness beats altruism within groups. So if you've got selfish actors within a group containing altruistic individuals, the selfish individuals will take advantage of the altruistic individuals. That definitely happens. But if you can create a group of purely altruistic individuals or set up a system in place where the altruistic individual, where there is the selfish behavior is suppressed and can't actually occur, then that altruistic group will by far outcompete the selfish group. And you can kind of create a mental experiment. Imagine a couple of groups out wandering around the plains in Africa. One of them is composed of, selfish and altruistic individuals, and the selfish individuals take care of, advantage of the altruistic individuals, and that group's performance, degrades. And, if you're wandering around the African savannah 50,000 years ago, you really can't, you can't have any degradation in performance, or you're going to be, somebody's breakfast. But if you have an altruistic group that's really working, collaborating, helping to raise each other's kids and teach each other things and show each other how to make tools or, hunt and share food and all of that, that group is going to vastly outcompete the other group every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like for a long time, it felt like there was a move, like you use the word granola. I think of like granola, kumbaya, like just like, oh, it feels good. It's lovely. Like, why don't we do this? Because we care about the earth or we care about the planet or whatever it happens to be. But I feel like there has been a shift. And I love that your book is part of this bigger conversation where there is the shift that there is a business case to be made about all of this. Yes, there's the inherent, we want to do this because we want to do good in the world. But then beyond that, it also is good for the bottom line. But I feel like that bottom line conversation feels like it took too long to kind of arrive. Was that kind of your experience too?
Yes, yes, exactly. So one of the issues with trying to write this book is I had to I started a bunch of different times, and what I finally had to get over and focus on was, who am I writing this book for? So, and I really wrote the book for the people who want to do this stuff. They feel like it is the right way. They probably are doing a bunch of it, but at the same time, they're being told, oh, you really can't do that. Your business is going to suffer. This isn't, where you should be spending your time, your effort, and your money, and that kind of thing. And so they're persuaded, or maybe they really want to do it gung ho, but now they've got a whole bunch of other people that they have to persuade, to come along with them on the journey. And so they need to have a way of articulating it that makes sense, and people get it and go like, oh, okay, now I see why this works, and this is so much better. And our business really will outperform, what it would otherwise be doing if we just, focused on creating value for shareholders, either for, shareholders, next quarter earnings or annual earnings or any of that kind of stuff. It's you're really going for what's really right and good and for the long term, all at the same time.
And what I think
it's going to work really well. You have a great time.
Right? Exactly. And what's really interesting too is that obviously there's been just more pressure within corporations to have DEI types of focuses, and a lot of in most cases it's too late. This should not be because they're being pressured by employees or by stakeholders or whomever it might be. But what's great about the conscious capitalism model, the B Corp model, and just anywhere where you're putting people and planet before profits, which is kind of the B Corp type of language, is that diversity and inclusion is inherently built into this model. It is not an afterthought. And so I look at kind of the B Corp certification process. So PYP is a B Corp, and it really just means that we have a higher commitment to sustainability, social impact, environmentally friendly practices, et cetera, et cetera. But what's great is that even in that assessment, which is incredibly difficult to get through, even in that assessment, it very clearly makes a lot of notations in you have to assess yourself on the diversity practices that are part of your business. And so I think that that's what's kind of great. But again, I feel like I wish this conversation had been happening much, much sooner, because I think a lot more organizations would be having this altruistic approach, but also having that diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of angle inherently built into what they were doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, one of the, we're doing the conscious, we have a conscious leadership program in the Conscious Capitalism group. And so Conscious Capitalism has 4 principles, as you know, that there's the higher purpose, conscious leadership, conscious culture, and stakeholder orientation. And even when you just do if you just talk about higher purpose, if you do that work and you take it seriously, and then you look at how that purpose applies to all of the things that you are currently doing, it's just shocking. Like when a typical company would examine their HR practices and other things and just find all kinds of wait, this doesn't line up. We shouldn't be doing it this way, and then have to reinvent those things to come up with a better way of doing them. And there are lots of better ways of doing, these things. So I often tell people that, if you imagine like a bell curve, and you have companies that are performing really badly, they're on the ropes, they may or may not make it till next year, that kind of thing. And a bunch of experts come in and they say, yeah, you should be running it this way. And they set them up with a whole bunch of programs and structure and all that kind of stuff. And then they get that group operating reasonably well. Now they're in the middle of that bell curve of businesses. So they're no longer on the failing end, they're squarely in the middle. But there's this other end of the bell curve also, where those companies are performing really, really well, and their employees are super engaged. Everybody's real excited. They have incredible relationships with all their customers and their suppliers and their community. And a lot of those practices that those experts set the company up with in the middle are going to keep them in the middle. They're not going to they'll keep them from sliding down to the low end, but they'll also keep them from moving up up the scale to the other end. So you've got to re-examine all of these things, the way that you're doing stuff, and let some of it go and change some of the things to get better.
Yeah, and I think having some type of external force that's
Yeah.
prompting you to do better, and this is kind of another thing about just kind of the B Corp certification, is that it's a self, I don't have to be a B Corp. I choose for our company to be a B Corp because it's something that's really meaningful and important to me. But they do change their assessment on a regular basis. And so that is then forcing all of these businesses that maybe were certified today, but then the new assessment comes out and all of a sudden we have to up our game in order to meet that new set of standards. And so it's kind of nice to have a forcing function, because I think as businesses, it's typically, I feel like the stakeholders or the shareholders, probably more often than not, that are the ones that are like really driving that direction in that conversation. Whereas there can be other ways that we can be holding ourselves accountable in kind of a broader community type of sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's nice to have some, things like that you can look at and read them and go like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I should be doing that. Or, oh yeah, oops. And kind of move yourself along, and come up with those things. And the other thing too is like with the, is it gives great clarity to what it is that you're trying to do. Once you become a B Corp, it says, look, I'm a different kind of company. I'm a different thing. So if you want to, do business with me, if you are a potential investor or whatever, it sends a very, very clear signal that this is not the normal thing. And you will attract those people who actually want to do something that's not the normal thing. So that's super important to have that alignment with, with the community that you're working with.
Yeah. And for me, I think that, with B Corps in particular, it's a seal, right? When someone knows what a B Corp is, it's a completely different conversation. And if you don't know, it opens the door to have a conversation. But I feel like even when you and I were first talking about us publishing your book, it was like there was an immediate alignment of values, right? Like there was like it's almost like a no-brainer. And so to me, that's like one of those amazing benefits of having something that you can lead with, because then you can attract more people that that collaboration that the two of you are going to do together is actually going to make an impact. Because for me, we could publish any type of book. Like the mechanics of the publishing process are relatively the same regardless of what type of book, but the impact and the mission and the kind of purpose behind it are completely different. And so to me, it's just kind of aligning those values super quickly. And then, we can just do better and help leave the world slightly better than when we found it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. It's great to be able to, there's a company I worked with last year and we went through their purpose statement, and then they immediately just started applying it to everything they do. And they set up a very clear system when they were, new customers, potential customers would show up. They talk to the customer, find out a little bit about them, put them through a little bit of an exercise. And if they weren't into it, it's like, yeah, well, we're not cut out for each other. So, and it's helped their business tremendously, because they're not, those relationships that aren't going to really work out are going to suck up a lot of time, usually more than the time where everything's just synergistically working well together. So
absolutely, yeah. So I want to just kind of go back to your Conscious Leaders Network,
Sure.
that class, like, because I'm curious if you want to kind of share just a little bit more information about that, because I even, as the founder, a co-founder and the board chair for Be Local Connecticut, you're the board chair for Conscious Capitalism Connecticut. And so I, as well as another board member from our Be Local, have had the opportunity to participate in this program. And I had no idea what I was getting into. And then after the first, and neither did she. And we were like, oh my God, this is like absolutely amazing. And so I feel like maybe this is an opportunity to kind of just share a little bit about that, because in addition to this, your book is also part of that curriculum, which I think is fantastic. And I was so excited. And we had talked about this, but then actually seeing it on like the syllabus that first day of the program just brings me joy.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah. So maybe in encapsulation of the, conscious capitalism, what the leadership program is about it's really, so the leadership program is really about getting people together who are interested in this sort of thing, having discussions around the 4 principles of conscious capitalism, and then allowing people to, interact, exchange ideas, and sort of like what we were saying before, you've got that, the B Corp thing, you've got a bunch of different things, standards that you're trying to meet and that are pushing you. The same sort of thing happens in this group. You've got all these other companies that are all doing things, and so somebody having a discussion about conscious culture, and you hear some ideas, something somebody else is doing or thinking about doing, and that kind of spurs you along to also consider what sorts of things like that you might want to be doing. So they all work together really well. But so just kind of maybe what conscious capitalism is, kind of going off of what I was saying before about the altruistic groups outperforming selfish groups. Essentially conscious capitalism is a conscious culture. So a conscious culture is creating basically an altruistic ecosystem within the company, so people feel safe to bring their whole selves to work. They feel competent in what they're doing. They're excited to learn new things and help out as they can. And there is a maximum amount of autonomy in that within the culture, so that people can come to work and see what needs doing and do the things that they do best for their group every day. So that's essentially what a conscious culture is. A stakeholder orientation is one of the other principles of conscious capitalism. The stakeholder orientation is really that same concept of an altruistic group, but at the level of the company's interaction with its suppliers and its customers and its community. So you're trying to create that same kind of altruistic ecosystem there. And if that group gets together and coheres and works with each other well, then that group of companies will outperform other similar groups that are competing out there in the world. So it's just basically the same thing at a different level. Conscious leadership is essentially pulling that together and also keeping the group focused on what their purpose is. And purpose is key to getting people aligned and thinking about what it is that they're trying to do as a group. And when you think about a individual going to work for a company, so if I'm working for, say, your company, and I get to come to work and do the stuff that I'm really good at for the group, for the company, and I know that your company is also working on doing really great stuff out there in the world with other groups or other entities, then I can feel extra jazzed up about what I'm doing, because I know I'm contributing not only to the group, but I'm contributing to some higher goal or higher purpose that we're all involved in.
Yeah, I love that. There's just so much to it. I honestly can't think of how to run a business differently. Like, it's just so in my DNA that I don't know. I genuinely don't know how I would do it differently.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, but I had a conversation with Raj Sisodia, one of the founders of Conscious Capitalism, and I said to him, this is a lot of the same stuff that we were already doing. It's like, yeah, I hear that all the time. People are doing this stuff, but there wasn't a name for it, and they felt like they were the only ones. And now it's a little bit more prevalent, but once there's like a name and a framework, and it's so nice to get together with other people. You often hear people will say, "Oh, I finally discovered my tribe." The group that I feel a part of, because this whole thing is just you get so much pushback from society in general that you can kind of feel like, oh yeah, I must be doing something wrong, or I'm fighting upstream. But to run in together with all these other people, it's fabulous, and then egg each other on, feel more confident about what we're doing. So.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Just all of my interactions with Conscious Capitalism and B Corps, it's exactly that. It's like finding your tribe, where you're like, oh, this isn't even we don't even have to talk about this. We can talk about elevating even further what we're doing, because fundamentally everything, we're all on the same page. There's no conflict there.
Yep.
So good. Cool. All right. This has been, I feel like, just a great conversation. Again, I could talk to you for days, and there's a million other things that I could bring up, but I'm gonna hold back. But is there anything that you want to share that I might not have asked you that you want to throw into the mix?
I would just say that it was a fabulous experience working with you and your group. I'll just because it was great. I was just absolutely focused on writing this thing, and because I felt this burning need to do it, and I pretty much wound it up, and I was like, oh well, it's not going to do any good if it's just sitting there on my computer. I need to get this published somehow. And I was like, oh wait, I know somebody who does that. So and working with your group has just been great. Bailey's amazing. fun to work with. And I think, and all the editors, the comments and the, constructive stuff that they did. And I really enjoyed the, the process of doing the book cover. That was a lot of fun. So yeah.
I think that's, to me, like the book cover is also one of our favorite parts of the process, just internally, because it kind of crystallized and actually feels tangible for the first time, where for months and months and, and depending on how long it took you to actually write it, it's just a bunch of words that, no one's going to see. But then once there's a cover, it just kind of sparks this excitement. And I think your cover came out great. It looks like is it behind you over your
shoulder? Yeah. And I got another one here.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. I was just going to ask you. I love it. Yeah, I feel like your cover came out fantastic. So for anyone who's watching this, they want to know more information about Conscious Capitalism. What's the website for Conscious Capitalism, CT?
Yeah, so it's just consciouscapitalismconnecticut.org.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then if they want to get in touch with you directly, how would they do that?
Sure. So they could email me. It's gwatson112455 at gmail.com.
Perfect. And then for anybody who wants to get a copy of Gavin's book, it is available wherever books are sold. However, especially in the spirit of this conversation, bookshop.org, I have mentioned them on countless other conversations that I've had, but bookshop.org is a B Corp, and they are basically doing everything they can to compete with some of the other names that are out there, but they're a B Corp, and they have that kind of altruistic business approach. And so I feel like it would be just a beautiful synergy of buying Gavin's book from Bookshop specifically, just because it ties everything together. So amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation, Gavin. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking to you again very soon. And then for everybody else, I will be back at another point in the future talking to someone else launching their book. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll talk to you all soon. All right. Bye, Gavin.